Please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
All eyes on RBI Governor Urjit Patel as he delivers policy decision today. CNBC TV18 poll expects a status quo despite the rate cut clamour. India Inc. says excise duty cut sends an important signal to RBI to cut rates. Industry body FICCI joins CII demanding a rate cut of at least 100 basis points.
And core sector output rises almost 5% for the month of August. Bulk of the gains coming from electricity and coal. Cement and crude oil output, though, disappoints.
And Godrej Agrawit's initial public offering opens today for subscription with a price band of 450 to 460 rupees per share. It has raised a little over 341 crores from anchor investors ahead of the IPO.
Well, the overnight handover was pretty good, but Asian markets, they've opened up a tad bit mixed early this morning. So the Nikkei is holding with gains of around 0.2%. That's really got to do with the dollar yen holding at around that 112.5 odd mark towards that 113 odd mark. So the Nikkei opens up in the green, but remember, a whole host of those markets have a vacation today. China, South Korea, as well as Taiwan, all those markets, they're closed for trade today. So volumes as well will be on a bit of a lower side in the Asian markets. The other one I think that's opened up is the Straits. So let's get that up for you on the screen. In fact, that was trading with a bit of a negative tick. It's down close to around 0.2%. Asia is mixed. Overnight Qs are positive. We have a big Q coming in today from the Reserve Bank of India. But the SGX Nifty, for starters, is saying yet after yesterday's 70-point run, maybe we'll see a bump up of around 10 to around 15 points just to kickstart trade. What that means is we're going to be opening up closer towards that 9,900 mark.
Okay, and on Wall Street, the U.S. markets closed higher, building on the strong gains from the previous session. The Dow Jones posted a 5-day winning streak. The S&P 500 also notched a record close, as did the Nasdaq Composite. CNBC's Josh Lipton gets us a wrap of all the action on Wall Street.
U.S. markets finishing the trading week higher. The Dow up 84, the S&P higher by 5, and the Nasdaq up 15. Two major hearings taking place on Capitol Hill today, with the former CEO of Equifax testifying on the credit bureau's massive data breach that compromised personal information of more than 145 million people. Meanwhile, Wells Fargo CEO Tim Sloan appearing before the Senate Banking Committee to discuss the bank's phony account scandal. Testimony there getting fiery when Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts said Sloan should be fired, accusing him of trying to cover the scandal up. Warren Buffett telling CNBC today Berkshire Hathaway will be holders of Bank of America stock for, quote, a long time. Berkshire is the largest shareholder of Bank of America, according to FactSet. The Oracle of Omaha giving a vote of confidence to Bank of America's CEO, Brian Moynihan. And finally, Fiat Chrysler recalling nearly 650,000 SUVs in the United States due to a brake shield issue. Company saying it is aware of one accident potentially related to the fault, which affects model years 2011 through 2014 Dodge Durangos and Jeep Grand Cherokees. That's the action from the U.S. market. You have a good trading day in India. Back to you in Mumbai.
Well, thanks, Josh, for that. But billionaire investor Warren Buffett says the valuation of the record-breaking U.S. market is not as expensive as it might appear. Given the low level of interest rates, the Oracle of Omaha also expects Fed to hike rates going forward. Here is an excerpt of that chat.
The one thing I'm sure of is that over time, stocks from this level will beat bonds from this level. If I could be short the 30-year bond at 3% or something and long the S&P 500 and just have it put away for 30 years, stocks are going to far outperform bonds. And the question is, which variable is going to change? And everybody expects interest rates to change, but they've been expecting it quite a while. If interest rates, if the 10-year moved up to 5%, I think stocks would be somewhat cheaper. Well, I think they expect them to increase, but the question is how much. I mean, if 3 years from now interest rates are 100 basis points higher than this, stocks will still look cheap at these prices. if they're 300 or 400 basis points, they won't look cheap. and Janet Yellen doesn't know what she would do 3 years from now. I mean, she's got more of a job than that's simple factor of the stock market. In the end, you measure laying out money for an asset in relation to what you're going to get back, and the number one yardstick is U.S. governments. And when you get 230 on the 10-year, I think stocks will do considerably better than that. So if I have a choice of the two, I'm going to take stocks at that point. On the other hand, if interest rates were on the 10-year were 5 or 6, you'd have a whole different valuation standards for stocks.
Well, the European markets that were open yesterday, a couple of big boys, they posted slight gains yesterday as political concerns eased out and also investors digested new data releases. Now, we did have the FTSE and the CAC, both of them ended in the green. Remember, the German DAX yesterday was closed for a national holiday. But focusing on the UK then, there was some disappointing data that weighed on sentiment. This after the Purchasing Managers Index for construction sector dropped to around 48.1. That's the first decline in activity that we've seen in more than a year. However, if you look at the peripheral indices as well, the Spanish IBEX, that's one of those markets that continue to see selling pressure. And yesterday, in fact, it ended as flat as can be. This on the back of the political uncertainty in Catalonia, that's lingering on. And the government in Madrid has said that it wants to work with other parties to resolve the issue of Catalan independence. So that's really what took place in the peripheral indices. But if you want to take a look at the emerging markets, the Brazilian index, that's the one that you should focus on. In yesterday's trade, that market ended with gains of around 3%. And the Ukraine index, that's not a market we normally talk about too much, but even in yesterday's trade, that ended with a gain of more than 1%.
Okay, let's then shift focus to the currency space. The dollar eases in trade as the rally triggered by the strong US data fizzled on speculation that US President Donald Trump's choice for the next Fed chair may be a less hawkish candidate than previously thought. Investors will also be watching for a raft of economic data culminating in Friday's US employment report for September.
In the world of commodities, and crude oil prices dipped as speculators took profits for a second day after big third-quarter gains. Though prospects for lending the global crude glut, that lends some support. Meanwhile, the American Petroleum Institute reported that U.S. crude supplies fell for the second week in a row by more than 4 million barrels for the week ended September 29th.
And from the precious metal space, gold rebounds from a 7-week low as the US dollar came off its highs.
Well, let's slip into a short break. You come back, we'll tell you all the cues and news that you need to track when we open up for trade in the next couple of hours. Well, welcome back. This morning, the SGX Nifty is indicating that we're going to open up in the green. And yesterday on the Lal Street, well, after a strong start, the markets, they pretty much held on to gains in trade yesterday. We at least managed to hold on to the 9,850 odd mark. The Sensex as well ended higher with the double century. Anisha, how's trade set up early this morning?
Well, yes, Nigel, as you mentioned, we were not able to hold on to the gains yesterday, but do remember that we closed in the green for the third straight session after the losing streak that we had seen in the last 7 days. Now, the markets mostly remained range-bound yesterday. For most part of the day, the Nifty was hovering around that 9850 mark, trading in the narrow range of around 20 points. We managed to close above the 9850 mark. But if you look at the funds flow picture, that also gives a bit of positive cue. Yes, the FIIs continue to sell. They sold around 700 crores in the cash market. But the DIIs pumped in more than double of that because the DIIs net buy figure was around 1,552 crores in the cash market yesterday. So a positive cue coming in that front. Even if you look at the other cues that are set up for trade today, in terms of the domestic cues, the most important would be the RBI policy decision that is expected at 2:30 today. Now remember, most of the market participants do not expect any change coming in the rate cut. But do remember that the other important part to look at is if there is any change in the the estimate of growth for the year or changes in the inflation trajectory as well. Remember, yesterday we heard that the government has cut basic excise duty rate on petrol and diesel by 2 rupees. So that will be another important cue really to watch out for. Other than that, if you look at the August core sector data, that has improved month on month. It has come in at 5% versus 2.5% earlier. So again, a positive cue. And remember, that has been led by mostly coal and power generation. So that should also impact those sectors. Cabinet meeting is expected to is scheduled for 10:30 a.m. today. Let's wait and watch what comes out of there. It is expected that something on SGV and one of the projects might come up. Other than that, if you look at the global cues, the US markets closed higher. The Dow continues to notch higher for a 5th straight day, and even the other indices like Nasdaq and the S&P 500 closed up by anywhere between 2/3 or 0.3%. If you look at the other global cues, well, Asian markets, as you mentioned, Nigel, earlier, most of them are closed today for holiday. So China, South Korea, and Taiwan markets are shut today. We will wait by and see how Hang Seng has opened. SGX 54 right now for early starters was showing a mildly positive start for the Indian markets. Yes, that one is holding up with gains of around 0.2%, and even Hang Seng has opened around 0.8% higher. So clearly the cues for the day look positive, but let's see how we build on that, Nigel.
All right, Anisha, so a positive setup is what we can see, but a lot of stocks to focus on.
Well, yes, the first one will be the OMC space. We were seeing the flashes coming on when JP Morgan said that the recent underperformance that we had seen in the OMCs might be able to be mitigated by the basic excise duty cut that has happened yesterday. Other than that, the auto numbers continue to flow in. For Hero Motors, the total sales came in at 7.2 lakh units versus 6.74 lakh units, so that should be in focus as well. North American Class 8 truck orders jumped by around 62%. Remember, the most important players in this space are Bharat Forge and RK Forgings and other forgings player, and that will remain in focus today as well. Other indices like Nasdaq and the S&P 500 closed up by anywhere between 2/3 or 0.3%. If you look at the other global cues, well, Asian markets, as you mentioned, Nigel, earlier, most of them are closed today for holiday. So China, South Korea, and Taiwan markets are shut today. We will wait by and see how Hang Seng has opened. SGX 54 right now for early starters was showing a mildly positive start for the Indian markets. Yes, that one is holding up with gains of around 0.2%, and even Hang Seng has opened around 0.8% higher. So clearly the cues for the day look positive, but let's see how we build on that, Nigel.
All right, Anisha, so a positive setup is what we can see, but a lot of stocks to focus on.
Well, yes, the first one will be the OMC space. We were seeing the flashes coming on when JP Morgan said that the recent underperformance that we had seen in the OMCs might be able to be mitigated by the basic excise duty cut that has happened yesterday. Other than that, the auto numbers continue to flow in. For Hero Motors, the total sales came in at 7.2 lakh units versus 6.74 lakh units, so that should be in focus as well. North American Class 8 truck orders jumped by around 62%. Remember, the most important players in this space are Bharat Forge and RK Forgings and other forgings player, and that will remain in focus today as well. Other than that, Ahluwalia Contracts has bagged an order worth around 560 crores, improving the order visibility of the company, which was a bit of pain point. So that should hold up in the green. Apollo Tyres, they have launched a QIP worth around 1,500 odd crores, and the rate has been decided around 250 per share. So that one clearly will be in focus. Cyient has signed a global software licensing agreement with LP Squared. Greaves Cotton has also announced a strategic partnership with Alter Green Propulsion Labs. That is to provide a clean energy powertrain solution for 3- and 4-wheelers. So that should come as a positive for that one. LT Foods, the board has approved raising of funds up to 500 crores by issuance of shares, so maybe a bit of dilution coming in there. RBL Bank positive there, as ICRA has upgraded the rating to AA- from A positive earlier. SGVN, as I was mentioning earlier, the cabinet is expected to revise the cost of Rampur Hydro project. So perhaps that should also start impacting companies' numbers, and that should start execution soon. So that comes as a positive. Just towards the end of it, Relcom, that one was in focus yesterday, but Moody's is saying that the company's rating remains unaffected by that. And Adani Enterprises was buzzing yesterday. The CEO yesterday said, the Adani Australian CEO yesterday said that they might look to sell out the minority stake in coal mine to raise funds. So that also will be important, Nigel.
Okay, thanks so much for that, Anisha. Well, entire market setup as well as some stocks that we can focus on. But let's take one of those points ahead. We'll slip into a short break, though, for the time being. And amid a public outcry over rising fuel prices, the government has reduced the basic excise duty on petrol and diesel by 2 rupees per litre. That's effective today itself. We'll get you more details on the other side of the short break. All right, then, in fact, I think we have a reaction that's coming in currently. I will try to get in some of those OMCs. Remember, there'll be a bit of an impact that will play out owing to this, to this price revision that we're going to see from today. All right, I think we can go across. I think we have Sapna with us. All right, we have Sapna with us. She's joining in to tell us more details about what's going on in terms of that price cut, and are they looking to tinker with even the VAT? Sapna.
So what we're given to understand is the 2 rupee cut in excise by centre may also be followed by announcements by state governments in terms of reduction of their VAT rates on petrol as well as diesel. The tune of reduction in the VAT rates may be up to 2 rupees, though of course the VAT rates are ad valorem, so they'll have to see how that really pans out. But the restructuring of the review or the reduction in the VAT rates will have to translate into an up to 2 rupee relief as far as prices are concerned. So 2 rupees by the centre in terms of reduction of the specific excise duty, states to match by another 2 rupees in terms of reduction in their VAT rates. And last but not the least, possibly OMCs will have to absorb the burden of up to 1 rupees. In the sense, if the prices are still going up, the crude prices, instead of passing the prices on in the retail market.
Okay, all right, Sapna, we'll get back to you. I think we have a reaction that's coming in currently. I think we have all right, we have Mr. A.K. Sharma, Director of Finance, IOC, who joins in at this point in time. Hi, Mr. Sharma. Good morning, sir. Thanks so much for joining in. Well, there's this price cut that's come about yesterday. How are you reading this, and how does it really impact your margins? Mr. Sharma? Mr. Sharma, is our voice reaching you? Are we audible? Okay, I think we'll try to reconnect to that, but that's going to be quite important. In fact, I'm reading a JP Morgan note on OMCs, and what they're saying is that they are highlighting that the latest marketing margins were around 2.5 rupees per litre for petrol and around 1 rupee 70 paise for diesel. That's considerably lower than that 4 rupees as well as 4 rupees 50 paise that it was just around a month ago. So they believe that this news is positive for sentiment, and a material expansion marketing margins for OMCs, though, is unlikely, and more or less it should remain stable. I don't know whether we have Mr. Sharma back with us. All right, we're trying to dial him in, but we have Varinder as well with us in the studio. Hi, Varinder, good morning. Did you fill petrol before? Explain this to us, Varinder. There was a lot of outcry that came about that why are petrol prices going higher?
First of all, if you're watching it for stocks, okay, you have to understand that all this is coming at the underperformance what we have seen in all the OMC stocks. So bear in mind that most of the stocks have underperformed the markets in the last 1 or 2 months. Now, what happens with excise duty? As simple as it is, excise duty is a pass-through.
Okay.
It is a pass-through. So, if anything comes to OMC, they just pass through, so they are not impacted by it. But what happens, why it is so important for OMCs? Yesterday, Sapna, informed us that, that government is thinking of cutting the prices anywhere between 4 to 5 rupees, going ahead.
Okay.
Yesterday, excise duty component, where centre cut by 2 rupees, state is expected to cut by 2 rupees, and 1 will be cut by OMCs. So this is the mathematics, okay? So if the centre has cut now, we'll await what state does. And yesterday, as Anuj informed, that IOC website says that the prices are down by 2.5 rupees, okay? So 2 is excise, 50 paisa is by OMCs, by IOC, okay? So now what happens is, as I said, excise duty is a pass-through, doesn't impact OMCs. But the important thing is that, if you're only watching out for stocks, it is an underperformance which has happened. JP Morgan is saying is a sentiment positive. But the important thing is what happens to the marketing margins going ahead. As you read it rightly, the marketing margins in the last, because the crude has been moving up, and hence the marketing margins on petrol and diesel, they have come down. Yes. It used to be 4.2. It has come to anywhere between 2, 2.5. So marketing margins are already down, okay? So, okay, I think we have IOC management with us. I think that's very important, Mr. Sharma. Mr. Sharma, please help us to explain what happens to OMCs after the excise duty cut.
See, excise duty cut is something which will be passed on to the customers. We are passing on the full benefit to the customer. So it's a pass-through for as far as we are concerned. It's a pass-through. It's a big relief to the public. obviously government has taken the right call in the interest of public, and we are with the government as far as giving the benefit to the customer is concerned.
So how much have you cut the prices?
As far as we are concerned, we are neutral on to this.
So how much have you cut the prices by, sir? You know, because as I understand, 2.5 rupees is the cut. Am I right in saying that 2 rupees comes from the center and half paisa from you?
Yeah, because this is a 2 rupee reduction in the basic price. So including the VAT, the total benefit to the public in Delhi is going to be 2 rupees 50 paisa in petrol and around 2 rupees 25 paisa in diesel.
So how much IOC has taken a cut? Like the oil and marketing company, is it 50 paisa?
No. Actually, as far as oil marketing companies are concerned, we have been maintaining for quite some time that we are not actually earning any additional margin which can be surrendered or which has to be left. We have been following a transparent mechanism even before the daily pricing was introduced. So we work on a very wafer-thin margin. So we hardly have any scope, and because it's a deregulated market, so oil companies are maintaining the same principles what they were following earlier. So it's now this government decided to give the relief to the public, so that we have passed on. If the state government take the call on VAT, that benefit will also be passed on to the public.
Mr. Sharma, what we're trying to understand is, the price cut is around 2 rupee 50 paise as you're mentioning. So 2 rupees is coming from the center. Are you saying that 50 paise is from the state? Because you're saying that OMCs have not cut prices.
50 paisa basically on 2 rupees, there is a VAT.
Correct.
So once you reduce the basic price, the VAT burden also reduces.
Okay.
So that automatically happens.
Okay,
because that's a value-based tax. So that benefit automatically goes to 2 rupees 50 paisa.
So OMCs have not cut any prices.
So IOC hasn't cut any prices, right?
Yeah.
So the petrol companies and you have not cut any prices.
Total tax benefit has been passed on. Now what we are expecting, if the state government per se, if they reduce the VAT rates, that will also be passed on as and when it happens.
But do you plan to cut prices, sir? Do IOC plan to cut prices apart from what center and state are doing?
As I said, we are following a transparent mechanism which is almost known to everybody. So we continue to follow that.
Sir, please help me to help me to explain this, because yesterday we heard that the government is saying that nearly 5 rupees cut will come on petrol and diesel, 2 will come from center, 2 from state, and 1 from OMCs. So what is OMC's stand in this?
So we will work out. That, but as far as because it's a deregulated market, so we will have to see the overall.
But have you been told to cut prices at all, sir?
No, we have not been told so far.
Okay.
So we'll have to see what is to be done. Yeah.
What are the latest marketing margins on petrol and diesel? Latest.
As I said, as of now, so I will. What I can say is that this is all available on our website that can be seen. What I can tell you is that whatever the margin was there before daily pricing continues to be the same.
Sir, what we read from your website, the latest marketing margins on petrol are nearly 2 rupees 52 paisa, which earlier used to be...
That is the gross. That is not the margin, that is the gross. Thereafter, you are incurring the freight for distribution, you are incurring the marketing cost. So, many major cost elements are there in that.
Earlier it used to be nearly 4, if I'm not wrong, okay? Have the marketing margins of petrol or diesel come down in the last 2-3 weeks?
No, basically the earlier which was coming as 4, because now we are following the daily pricing mechanism. So accordingly, the margin was also required. Margin was being worked out with the old system of fortnight. So that was aligned to daily. So that is how it is coming to 2 rupees 40 paise.
So please understand us to correct, okay, that has Delhi only cut VAT? What about Mumbai?
No, everybody. In Delhi, we have mentioned the impact in Delhi. In Mumbai and other places, the impact will be much more. There, the VAT rate was much higher. The impact will be much more. The reduction will be much more. It is kindly understand the VAT rate has not been reduced by any state government so far, because excise duty is a part of basic price. So whatever reduction we do in the basic price, automatically it's a percentage-based tax. So automatically the tax comes down.
So one thing which analysts
it is all India, everywhere VAT reduction automatically happens.
So one thing which analysts are thinking is that, because of this tinkering around, the marketing margins will not continue to expand for OMCs. What is your take on the marketing margins on petrol and diesel? Do you?
That will be passed on, and that is being passed on in full to the public.
But you are saying that the gross marketing margins have not come down in the last 2-3 weeks, sir? I think we lost IOC management, but I think a lot of clarity we got it from. We'll try and reconnect him, if possible. But thank you, Mr. Sharma, for joining us. If you can hear us, Nigel, I think some of the critical points, what he mentioned is that there is no cut by OMCs at the moment. Okay, I think which is a relief for, if you're watching out for stocks, IOC, HP, and BP. But marketing margins, he is seeing that he hasn't seen any erosion. And he is also mentioning that that they will be stable at around the current levels. Two things, they are. But two things what I think most of the analyst community wanted to know is whether there is a price cut by OMCs, which is not as per IOC. And second thing is that it is a complete pass-through. It is, as I told also, it is a pass-through, so it does not impact OMCs. And of course, the marketing margins will be stable around current levels. Going by this, I don't see any impact on OMCs. It's a neutral thing which has happened on OMCs today. Let's see how the analysts read more into it and how the crude behaves, because crude, if it keeps on moving up from here, then it will be a problem. But at the moment, it doesn't seem to impact OMCs. It is a neutral thing, the excise duty cut which has come. And the good thing is for the stock market, who are watching, that there is no cut by the OMCs.
Okay, all right, Varinder, thanks so much for taking us through all those details. So that's one big cue that's coming in early this morning. But